Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of MDIC Live, a fireside chat style series outlining the latest happenings within the Medical Device Innovation Consortium and the medical device industry at large. Today's session, we'll talk about the rise of MXR, or Medical Extended Realities, a digital health facet that presents vast opportunities for both medical device developers and clinicians to operate more efficiently and more effectively assess and evaluate clinical practice standards. To tell us more about this industry development, please join me in welcoming Senior Program Director for Digital Health and Technology at MDIC, Jithesh Veetil, and Associate Director of Clinical Research for Robotics and Digital Solutions from Johnson & Johnson, and our MXR Working Group Lead, Heather Benz. Good morning and welcome you both to MDIC Live.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning and good afternoon, and thanks for the welcome.
Thank you for joining us. And before we jump into today's topic, I'm so excited about today's session, but I want to remind the folks in the chat before we do, the folks that are joining us live from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. This is going to be an interactive session, so feel free to leave your questions and comments for today's guest in the comment section, and we may even answer a few of them later on in today's session. But without further ado, let's dive right in. So for Jithesh, you've been a guest of MDIC Live previously, so the folks might be a little bit more familiar with you, but is there anything else you want to share for those who don't know you or haven't had the chance to meet you yet?
Okay. Thank you, Devin, and thank you, Heather. Really excited to be here participating in this live session. I have participated representing other programmatic areas of MDIC that I lead, but I'm assuming a lot of new folks joining today. So those who are not familiar, the digital health and technology initiatives at MDIC encompasses areas like cybersecurity, computation modeling and simulation, 5G-enabled healthcare technologies, of course, the medical extended reality that we are going to discuss with Heather Benz. I am by training a biomedical engineering, but I've been working at this intersection of science, technology, regulatory science, and policy for a while now. So those who would like to learn more about Digital Health and Technology program, please drop a note here during this session. We can catch up offline or a little later. And for augmented reality, medical extended reality specific topics, please have those questions ready. We can try to address today. And I'm so excited to have this conversation here with Heather. So passing to you, Heather, for an introduction.
Thanks, Jithesh, and also very excited to be here. As always, it's a real pleasure working with you and with MDIC. I've been with J&J for a few years now in the clinical research group for our robotics and digital platforms. This is a growing space and obviously has lots of tie-ins to MXR. But I've worked with MDIC for even longer than that in their patient input program, as well as some of the other digital health programs. And previously spent a little bit of time at FDA leading some of the initiatives there. So this is a great group, and it's been a real pleasure to be able to collaborate on this really exciting space.
Thank you, and thank you guys for joining us. With our new guest, Heather, we're introducing a new topic here on MDIC Live, Medical Extended Realities. For those who aren't familiar, could you give us an overview? What are medical extended realities, or what are medical extended reality devices even?
Absolutely. And I think folks by now have heard in the news about virtual and augmented reality headsets that you're wearing that either completely occlude the space in front of you and immerse you in a virtual world, or that interact with the physical world around you so that you see virtual overlays and digital elements that add to your experience in the world. These capabilities are exciting in a consumer space, but can be paradigm shifting in a medical space, because you can bring new technologies, new capabilities to patients, as well as to practitioners, surgeons, and others who are able to leverage them. So the future is now. We are seeing the use of these devices in many, many different clinical applications. Everything from interventional procedures to surgery, diagnostics, therapy, across the spectrum, from mental health to rehab to any number of surgical specialties, as well as other places that we haven't even thought about yet today, but that are happening in labs everywhere around the world. That means that with all of these new applications come an opportunity to understand whether they are assessed similarly to devices that we've seen in the past, and or if there are additional considerations that we need to think about.
Thank you. And so you talked a lot about the opportunities, and we all have been made aware about the surge in AI, augmented reality, virtual reality technologies. I want to zero in on one part of what you said at the top of your answer there, and that's patients. Jitesh, this question is to you. Patients are at the center of MDIC's work, as you know. I want to know, how does MXR and investing in these types of technologies benefit patients?
Yeah, I can start off and then I'll pass it to Heather. Patients are at the center of almost all projects at MDIC. And this one, as Heather was alluding to, a lot of innovation in the field. And there are a few examples she mentioned, which is already, FDA cleared and in the market. There are a lot of surgical applications with medical extended or augmented reality space. And then there are other use cases too. So it's exponentially increasing in terms of how patients can leverage this innovation. Just wanted to add a point here. I think Heather already mentioned it briefly. With all this exponential increase, that means that the challenges of getting it into the market, for example, evaluating safety, efficacy, and awareness and education around it, that's all going to be a key component. That's where MDIC is very closely working with FDA, industry, and as well as patients. So again, you wouldn't see historically a lot of direct patient involvement in MDIC projects or working groups, but the patient advocacy groups directly or indirectly participating in all these works. And we also always welcome individual patients to contribute to MDIC project streams. We will have always opportunity to incorporate their feedback. So with that, I think Heather can give a more, in-depth answer to some of the, direct patient benefits of augmented reality spectrum.
And they're quite varied. We have a leader on our MDIC working group on MXR, Bob Fine, with IVHRA, a VR industry group. He holds a conference every year. I was privileged to attend and speak this year. And the folks who attend are quite varied and include a number of the players in the MXR space that are small startups or academics spinning up a new startup out of a lab. These folks are doing all kinds of things for patients, bringing care into the home, meeting them where they're at in order to do rehab, in order to do mental health. It then expands and gets bigger and bigger. Bring opportunities to improve procedural or surgical safety by putting more information in front of a healthcare practitioner when they are doing their job. Or even not just information, but imaging. Other relevant clinical information that may have a chance to make the system more usable, to improve safety. There are a lot of opportunities here, a lot of opportunities that academics, startups, and larger players the world over are in the process of proving out now. Really, it's ultimately about improved patient care and improved patient access to care.
Thank you guys for that thorough response. And speaking of these opportunities, I'm wondering, and you mentioned the MXR, the Medical Extended Realities Working Group under MDIC, one of MDIC's many working groups that work toward regulatory issues or various innovational challenges. Tell us more about this working group. What inspired MDIC to form this MXR working group, and how does the group kind of work to seize some of these different opportunities that you both have mentioned early on in this session?
Yeah, I can start off. So, as we have been discussing, we, I think, established the point that this is a upcoming field, fast growing field, exponentially growing field, I would rather say. That means there are opportunities and challenges bringing this innovation to marketplace. And when it, in terms of marketplace for US, one of the key players is FDA. FDA has the regulatory authority here. Now, with innovative technologies, it's not that easy to just approve products and allow it to market. FDA wanted to be ensure that it is safe and effective, do the thorough review of the submission of these technologies, all these products. In some cases, FDA is not fully manpowered or resourced to review completely all this upcoming unique innovation. So it's always better to have some kind of education awareness around it, even for FDA. And FDA does that in multiple fronts. For example, for augmented reality space, considering or understanding all these potential challenges and opportunities, FDA proactively convened a workshop almost now 2 years ago at FDA campus in White Oak, Maryland, and invited all the innovators from the field, J&Js and big manufacturers, technology companies like Facebook or Google's and so on, and then other chip manufacturers, and so a really broad range of stakeholders who are contributing to the innovation in the field of augmented reality and medical extended reality. That was an internal FDA workshop, and there were a lot of really interesting, engaging conversation. And one thing FDA team championed that workshop realized was there is more to do. And MDIC platform is exactly to do such activities. For example, if there are opportunities of advancing regulatory science or bringing consensus between multiple industries and stakeholders without any conflict of interest. For example, no advocacy elements, no policy elements, and so on, purely focusing on the patient-centric nature and the regulatory science part of these challenges. That's where MDIC platform is. That's where MDIC platform is meant for. So FDA recognized it, and our counterparts at FDA, we had multiple brainstorming activities, and as a result, we decided that we will convene a group specifically focus on augmented reality, medical extended reality at MDIC, and then rest is history. We have a very flourishing MXR working group championed by Ryan Beams from FDA, as well as co-chair Heather Benz from J&J. Heather can actually explain a little more specifics about how the working group is structured and so on. Heather?
Absolutely. And what I love is the way that the working group has been informed not only by the critical conversations that happened at that FDA workshop, but by extensive input from the MXR community. We learned that there have been substantial challenges and opportunities in a few key areas, and that's where we chose to focus first. We started in surgery, preoperative planning, intraoperative use, because that's an important space where there's an opportunity for impact, as well as a space where there may be a number of risks that need to be defined and understood. And I mentioned that Bob Fine is leading a terminology group. He's just making sure that everyone can come to the table using the same language. What I love that MDIC did about this group is they opened it up to anyone, including lots of startups, lots of folks who may not have a history in a medical device space. And that's the MXR community today, right? Everyone needs to be aware, not only what is the technology, what is the regulatory landscape. We're getting that on paper. Then Jennifer Silva from Senti-AR, as well as Mark Egeth from Enogen, and others identified the fact that there's gaps in alignment on human factors questions. What do we need to ask when we look at the human factors or the usability of an MXR system? And they, together with Tabitha Solomon, who joined from Vicarious Surgical, have been leading a team to outline what is the human factors landscape and what are the opportunities, what are the questions that come up that don't have the obvious answers that people can point to. Then Ryan Beams from FDA, my co-lead, as well as a number of other folks, Adam Inbar from RealView Imaging, Jennifer Esposito from Magic Leap, Evangelis Lamporidis from Enosis, came together and said there are fundamentally important imaging quality questions that we want to make sure we understand. What's similar to a 2D display? What's different? What comes up when you talk about contrast, when you talk about colors, when you talk about having the information in a way that you can see and that can be used effectively and safely for these applications. And then lots of folks are using AR and VR for training. So Shweta Daga from Align Technology has come in and is helping us understand, are there things we should know about how you validate that your training is effective? Is that helpful to the community here? And the community jumped up and said, yes, please help us understand how we can demonstrate that we've got effective training. Not all of these questions will hit a 510K submission for an MXR device. Some of them are early stage development. Some of them come up in conversation with FDA. Some of them come up in conversations with the folks using the devices. But all of them have gaps that need to be filled in so that there's a clear pathway to accelerate access for patients to these devices.
Thank you. Thank you both for outlining more about how this group works and kind of refocus on what you guys are sort of targeting as your work moves forward. You mentioned human factors, you mentioned training, and in looking at the working group's timeline, you guys have also set out a period to focus on terminology and image quality. What do those different areas represent, and how do they play a role, or what role do they play in the overall structure of the working group?
Sure. We just break out every couple of weeks into these groups, and we really chew on the hard questions. The questions from innovators: what do I need to answer? What should I be confirming about my device in terms of usability, in terms of the image quality? In some cases, folks are bringing questions I have run into when working with the FDA on one of my devices where we did not have an immediate answer. And it took time and effort to get that answer. So we want there to be a playbook, a cookbook, so that we understand the things that we're going to be considering. And then in some cases, for example, in human factors, a very frequent question that may or may not be asked in a regulatory context, but may come up is something like, is this device going to have an impact on my attention or on my cognitive burden, right? So what is the science even in these open spaces that are very new? These teams, I mentioned the leaders, but they're accompanied by tons of fantastic volunteers who are putting together, first pass, a framework report. We'll be publishing this for public comment in the next couple months, and we certainly invite everyone to take a look and engage and give feedback. This is really our landscape. Where are we today? Where are the gaps? Perhaps what science, what standards, what guidance exists today that can help you as you're navigating these gaps? And then what are the opportunities, right? Where we'll be doing the work to fill in these gaps.
Yeah. Devan, just to add to that point, we are already finalizing some deliverables from this working group, but as Heather mentioned, this is a broad field, and innovators are spread across globally. And we at MDIC, we do welcome folks, subject matter experts focusing on this various aspects of MXR to join our working group and contribute. So our doors are always open. So just, drop a note to us.
Yeah, and you guys both touched on one of the coolest parts of the working groups is it's an opportunity for you to come and ask questions to folks who may have already gone through similar experiences or who may have answers or be curious to find answers. It's a good collaborative space to find out, what it is that you want to know in various parts of the regulatory process and of digital health as a whole. So thank you guys for that. And I think the question on everyone's mind after hearing that is, how do you get involved? And, what are some of the other things that you guys have coming up on the horizon?
So I can start. I think, as we mentioned, this is a broad field. The Ryan and Heather, the whole team initially narrowed down the surgical interoperative cases of augmented reality or extended reality as the first phase of study, but as we complete the initial deliverables, we'll be expanding it further. So brainstorming is already underway. So folks who wanted to learn about ongoing work and learn more about our strategic discussions going into the next year, please do drop a note, connect with Heather, connect with any of the MDIC staff members. Heather, maybe add more color.
Absolutely. We certainly are very open to engagement now. As like I said, we're developing this framework report. Your input is critical now. And Joe, who is our fantastic MDIC staffer, super responsive to this email address popping up, and will get you integrated right away into the group. I mentioned our first year's focus is surgery. We are very aware from the community and from our initial chartering process that there is a great deal of interest in rehab, in pain management, in mental health, in a variety of other questions, in clinical research and preclinical research. If there are burning questions that you would like to help answer in any space in MXR, our next step will be to charter that next step, right? So the opportunity to dive in, have your voice heard, and direct the next phase for this group will be there. I also want to give a huge shout out to our FDA colleagues who have joined. We've got fantastic FDA participation on this working group and leadership. And this collaboration is a real opportunity to work closely across the ecosystem and really align on how do we move forward as a technology space. How do we make this impact here and now today? So absolutely invite lots of participation. We have many unanswered and open questions, and I think that it's only through broad participation in the community that we drive this in a way that is helpful and effective for everyone who needs it.
And there's certainly no shortage of things to work on within the group, topics to discuss. So I share your sentiment and invite everyone to contact the MXR group at the email address that you guys saw on your screen. Keep in touch and also submit your comments in the comment section here for today's guest. I want to go broader for a second. Where does MXR go from here? Not only the working group, but the theme as a whole. Where do medical extended realities go from here?
Yeah. I can start. I mean, I would generally comment from an MDIC perspective or digital health portfolio perspective that we are the foundation or a platform for the stakeholders to come and address the challenges. I sometimes make this analogy of opportunities are all signals, whereas challenges and burden is noise. So we wanted to maximize the signal to noise ratio. That's what MDIC platform is. So as we learn more from the group, when I say group, our stakeholders are both industry side, patient side, and FDA side. We gather the very insightful feedback from this group. We process it as a group and build consensus on these are the immediate pain points that we can address. The one thing which MDIC generally do when we define a project is where we can have clear impact. Heather mentioned beautifully why she selected or why we selected surgery as a case study. And there is definite impact, the definite educational opportunities. So we do the similar exercise in strategically in the whatever field, whatever the topics, whether it is rehabilitation or whatsoever. But it's a collaborative process. Heather?
Absolutely. And to think about where we can go, I want to think about where we are right now, which includes a fantastic meeting that the FDA hosted, the Patient Engagement Advisory Committee meeting on virtual and augmented reality. Really great opportunity to hear from patient advisors on what they're thinking about. They're thinking about not only the tremendous clinical opportunities and the potential impact on patient care, but also how patients learn about that impact. How does the community create evidence about the impact of MXR devices on patient well-being, patient safety, improved patient care? And then how do we work with, whether it's NIH in clinical trials, whether it's FDA in labeling or education, how do we move public health forward? Go from the sandbox, the innovators, to executing and to creating a new paradigm for care. I will add that there are lots of questions to answer along the way. A lot of uncertainty and ambiguity that MDIC can participate in making more clear. We also hear from those who are interested in more education around MXR, around FDA's thinking around MXR, around opportunities for improved science in this space. So huge opportunities. And I think that we're trying to set everyone up with a springboard to tackle each of those opportunities.
Thank you both. And so the future looks bright. And of course, there's a lot of work to still be done. But I want to drill in on one of those points that you made for our last question here today, which is the education aspect. For those of us that are not exactly in the medical device space or in the technology space, sometimes these technological advancements happen so quickly that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. How can the medical device ecosystem make sure that these advancements are both understood by both patients and other affected stakeholders?
Okay, I can give a brief, comment and then pass it to Heather. Some of these fields, regulated space for medical device, the word education means multiple things. So the patient education is the focus, but patient might get education on these advanced technologies through their physician or the nurse. So some of the things Heather and the working group is leading is educating, training the physicians and the nursing community. And in some cases, it's actually, having best practices and documentation available for, FDA itself. So it's a education through multiple sources that we focus on. Again, I'm fully aware that in this field these days, there's a lot of information and misinformation. So we need a very systematic and quality approach in providing good education, particularly if this is related to healthcare needs. Heather.
And I'm going to give a shout out to MDIC. I think that one of the underappreciated resources is the MDIC website with a tremendous number of work products that are so helpful for innovators, for patients, for those trying to really get up to speed on the space. Right, a lot of folks know to go to the FDA website, dig into guidance or whatever they've been publishing lately. But the MDIC website has these fantastic projects, sometimes very cutting edge, and an opportunity to think about how we communicate with patients, how do manufacturers communicate with patients, how do patients want to digest the material, as well as how do we communicate with the patient care provider team, right, who is ultimately at that interface and walking with them through their journey. Love that resource, and certainly the MXR group will contribute to that as well. So we'll be seeing more to help us as we work on that whole communication ecosystem.
I have to echo that sentiment and say the MDIC resource library is pretty comprehensive, and it has a lot of different tools out there free of charge. So we are always working on resources within MDIC to help you face or tackle a number of regulatory challenges, again, innovational challenges. So I agree with Heather, definitely check that site out, and definitely stay tuned for things that are going to come from the MXR working group in that resource library. With that being said, we're at time for today's session already. We've covered a lot in 30 minutes, talking about the rise of MXR, AR, VR. We've talked about the benefits that this field has to patients and how clinicians and medical device manufacturers can leverage these developments. So I want to thank you all for sharing so much information with us and sharing all of your progress. We look forward to hearing more about your work, and I thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you again. This is such a pleasure.
Thank you. For more information on any of the resources that you heard here today, do visit mdic.org and feel free to peruse our different resources within the digital health and technology space, specifically those from the Medical Extended Realities Division. That's all for today's MDIC live session. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.